Well, I'm not an expert. I'm not an authority. I'm someone who has been a murderer for almost 20 years.
Maybe I should have killed 400 or 500 people, then I would have felt better.
People say Ted Bundy didn't show any emotion. There must be something in there. I showed emotion. You know what people said? See, you really can get violent and angry.
Welcome to the Squonk The Hag, a podcast about murder, mystery, the supernatural, and even a conspiracy or two.
Dun, dun, dun.
My name is Mo.
And I'm Kraken.
Welcome on in, guys, to another episode of the show.
Back by unpopular demand, me.
To say, today is our first episode back after taking a whole week off. 1 whole week, Krakow.
One whole entire week, however, will we recover?
I don't know. It just flew by, and now I'm back here with you.
You say that like it's a bad thing.
No. But it is a Krakow Tale week.
Yes, it is. We got more spooky stories from the desk of Ranger.
I'm smiling on the inside.
Yeah, it'll be fine.
It's fine.
It's perfectly fine.
It's fine.
It's totally not a story that's like weird and creepy and has no explanation. This will be fine. So today we have the story of the vanishing village at Anjikuni Lake. And I'm thankful that Ranger decides to put brackets in here with how to pronounce these words. It's like once. He knows.
Usually he just evilly laughs.
Yes, I think he's taking pity on Krakow, and he's just like, I'll help you out. Put the pronunciation in here.
See, I have a different theory. I think he's being nice because this is the calm before the storm. And then like his next one for you is going to be something like that town in Wales. It's the longest town name in the world.
He would. He finally he did look it up and say that there wasn't much there. Perhaps he found a single story from that and he's like, yeah, here we go.
So I think he's just like, all right, I'm gonna help Krakow out. I'm gonna tell him how to pronounce this. And then 2 stories later, he just whips out the hardest thing to pronounce in the world. Or something about the Adirondacks.
It's either that or it's because I've started DMing for our D&D group some nights now, and he's worried about what I might do.
Uh-oh.
They gave me power. I don't know why they thought this was...
That's their first mistake.
Exactly. They gave me the ability to create my own world and put enemies in it with no regard for how the leveling works, so...
Oh, no. See, I think the only thing scarier than playing D&D with you is playing D&D with you being the TM.
I have all of the power. I make the decisions here. I have the talking stick.
I feel so bad for whoever, because I know it's a small group of you, but I feel bad for all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Every single one of them.
Oh, trust me, they're just as chaotic. It's only fair.
Now, how much of that is chaos because of who they are, and how much of that is just retribution for dealing with you?
Fair. You have a point.
Because, like, normally, I would not just walk around shooting people over and over again and then healing them and shooting them again. And yet, that's what I did playing GURPS with you. You bring out a different side of people.
That's just how it happens.
All right, so... Anjikuni Lake.
Yes. So disappearances aren't new to the paranormal world, as I'm sure you are aware, but the most famous one is, of course, the missing people in the Roanoke colony. I'm sure everyone, or at least most people, know about that one to an extent.
And it's actually something that is on the list to cover in a future episode.
Yes. The people from the Roanoke colony were last seen in 1587, but is by no means the only missing group of people to come from North America. There's another tale with smaller numbers, but also mysterious nature. It's the missing village of Anjikuni Lake. This is from the...
So, when I heard this name, Anjikuni, I was assuming this was, like, in Asia somewhere, or something like that. That doesn't sound like a North American name. Am I wrong in that?
No, it's I don't know if it's a North American name. I think I want to say it's like in Alaska and the upper part of Canada, because it was an Inuit village.
Oh, okay. That does explain it a little bit then.
We're starting off with a little bit of an easier name for me to pronounce. In the 1930s, a fur trapper, Joe LaBelle, he was looking around, checking his trap, seeing what he caught, And he was very far into the wilderness, and it was starting to get dark. So with it being winter, it gets colder at night as nature does things.
It does?
It does. I know, it's a shock, right?
Oh my God. Here I was running outside in a bathing suit at night in the wintertime because I thought it got warm.
Same. And the sun doesn't really do much of anything. It's only out during the daytime when it's already bright. The moon actually lights things up when it's night when we actually need light. So, I mean...
A fun fact that you probably know, but the moon doesn't actually emit any light. It's just the reflection of the sun.
Really? I thought it was like a giant light bulb.
See, in this case, I'm not sure if you're joking or not. Although, actually, you probably... Because you and I have talked about space stuff before. Like, Chris and I watched when they took the DART mission and, basically ran a satellite into a moving asteroid billions of light years away.
Oh, yes.
So you and I have talked space before, so I know you probably know that, but...
Yes.
I never really grew up. I know this isn't a shock, but I'm still into dinosaurs and space stuff.
I mean, same, aren't we all?
Not everybody. Some people are like weird.
Some people are weird and actually become adults.
I know. They're like, I do my taxes on time, and I mean, I do my taxes on time, but only because I have to. But they're like, I invest stuff and wear suits, and I have a briefcase, and I put on real pants every day.
Who puts on real pants every day? That's just gross.
I don't know, but oh my God. Today, the CEO messaged me and he's like, hey, I have a project I need some help with. Do you have a second for a call? And our company policy is all calls are on video call, because we're fully remote. So I calls me on Teams and everything. I open it up and I looked at myself in the camera, and I'm wearing my fuzzy Batman bathrobe. My hair's like all over the place. He couldn't see, but I'm in my pajamas and slipper socks. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And luckily my CEO is really cool. And he's like, I don't care. You're working. As long as you're doing the work.
That's the way it should be, even for jobs where you have to show up. As long as you're working, wear whatever you want, be comfy.
Well, and like I didn't have any client calls today, and it was it wasn't scheduled. It wasn't anything like that. But I was like, oh my God, I look like an utter slob. And I'm talking to the guy who owns and runs the company I work for. Great.
It's just a habit, and you just show up in your bathrobe.
Oh man, it's so comfy though. It's one of those ones that's like that. So like there's different types of fleece, but it's the one that's like a little like silkier or softer or whatever. It's not like the and it's covered with Batman logo.
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. And it's so soft and it's warm.
Very nice.
And it's winter time, so I'm cozy.
And it's windy.
Yeah, it's oh man, it's so windy out. And then I have my wool socks on with my slipper socks that I made on over top.
Very nice.
So I don't know where we were going with this, but anyway, missing people.
I don't know. That's just where we ended up. That's what happens with this podcast. If you haven't learned by now.
And yet, I've actually had people that are like, "I love when you guys go off on things." I'm like, "Good," because it's never gonna stop.
It's not. It's really not. If you want the rambling to stop, I'm sorry, but this is not the podcast for you.
We have the attention spans of 3-year-olds. Like,
we literally do, and it's the same IRL. This is not just for the podcast.
It's not. Although I still get slightly perturbed at that one time when you called me and you said you needed help with something, and all you did was say that you were trying to contact me about my car's extended warranty.
Yes.
I stopped working for that call, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Yes. It'll be fine.
No, it will not. I will never get that 2 minutes of my life back.
I cost you 2 minutes of your paycheck to ask you about your car's extended warranty.
Well, no, I seriously thought you needed help with something because you were having trouble with your streaming setup about like around the same time, and I was like, oh, he probably needs help with his camera or his microphone or something like that.
Just asking about your car's extended warranty. Anyway, back to the story.
Yeah, Joe LaBelle, 1930s.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He's checking his traps. It's winter. It's getting dark. It's cold. He needs to sleep, and he needs to also keep warm, because that's kind of two things that people need when it's cold and dark. So he knew of a fishing village that was nearby that was a bustling Inuit fishing village near Anjikuni Lake. So he started to head toward there because he figured he could find some place to sleep there for the night. But as he got close, he shouted a greeting, so as he didn't startle anyone, he just didn't show up unannounced. But there was no response. It was met with only his echo and the wind whistling over the village.
That's creepy.
Yeah, at this point, something's not right, so his senses are on high alert. Being an experienced outdoorsman, he could tell, like, something's not right here. There was no response. This is a busy village. Why did no one say anything? So he kind of looks around and he notices a light coming from between the trees at the edge of the village. So he picked up the pace a little bit and hoping to find someone that could tell him what was happening. But when he got to the spot where the light was coming from, he just found the embers of a dying campfire and a stew that had been left to blacken in the pot.
Wait, we need to get the guy from the Christmas episode, pot liquor.
Oh my God. I forgot about that.
How can you forget about pot liquor?
So, finding no one at this little campfire, he decides to turn toward the village, and he saw that there were no sounds coming from the dark fishing huts. No noise of conversation or laughing or anything. But most disturbingly, there was no smoke coming from the chimneys of these homes. So he silently walked forward past the wave-beaten kayaks that they used for fishing, and he looked in every house, and he saw that meals were still set out in pots, but it was getting kind of moldy. Clothes were in the process of being mended. They had the bone needles were still sticking out of them, and most importantly, he found every home had a rifle, and there was food stockpiled in the houses along with a very full fish house. So it seems like, from what he can gather, all 25 people had just got up and left without any supplies, food, clothing. They just kind of disappeared.
Yeah, that's crazy. Because they would maybe there would have been some food left, but not.
They would have taken something.
Yeah, they would have taken rations or as much as they could carry if they had to immediately leave.
Yeah. And another thing too, you would think that if these people had left, there would be sled tracks around the village.
Oh, that's a good point.
He looked for those. There were no sled tracks. There was nothing.
Were the sleds still there?
We'll get into that in a moment.
Oh no.
So he was kind of startled and frantic at this point because he's like, no one in their right mind, let alone 25 people, would just leave a village in the middle of winter with no food or protection. So he made a tough decision, and as cold and tired as he was, he decided that he was going to go to a telegraph office many miles away and call for the Mounties, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. So he also didn't want to stick around in this village because, not knowing what happened, he didn't know if the same thing could possibly happen to him. So he didn't want that to happen. I don't blame him. I wouldn't have stayed in the creepy village anyway.
The only thing, it's a really hard decision because it's like shelter and a place to make a fire so you could be warm.
But the people who stay here are no longer here, and I don't know where they went.
Yeah, everyone just disappeared. It's fine.
Yeah, he left. He went through the sub-zero temperatures all the way to the telegraph office and got word out. And so the Mounties responded several hours later. In the interim, LaBelle had been able to compose himself, and he told his part of the story. And after this, apparently Ranger loves using the word Mounties now. He had to add a little note in there letting us know this. So the Mounties started toward the village. On the way, they stopped for a bit of rest at a little shanty that was shared by trapper Armand Laurent and his two sons. And the officers...
Armand Laurent, probably, but
you're probably right. You know my English skills aren't very well. Do I need to remind you of adjacent and adjacent?
It's French.
I can barely speak English. That's exactly my point. But the officers explained to them that they were headed to Anjikuni Lake to deal with a kind of a problem.
That's an understatement.
Yeah, it's just kind of a problem. Just the whole village goes missing.
25 missing people. It's just kind of a problem. Small little thing.
It's kind of a problem. I wouldn't worry about it. It's fine. But they asked whether or not the Laurents had seen anything. Again, how did you pronounce that? Because Laurent. Okay, so the Laurents hadn't seen. They asked if they had seen anything unusual, and they hadn't during the past few days. And the trapper was forced to concede that he and his sons actually had spotted a bizarre gleaming object soaring across the sky just a few days before. Laurent claimed that the enormous illuminated flying thing seemed to change shape before their very eyes. It transformed from a cylinder into a bullet-like object, and he also said that it was flying directly toward the village.
What?
Nothing to be worried about at all. I'm sure it's fine.
Yeah, I'm sure it's no.
No?
It is many things. Fine is not one of them.
When they finally got to the village, they were able to confirm that what the bell had said was true, and they also made a few other discoveries. So this is the point where Ranger had to include a little warning here. If you don't like or uncomfy with things happening to animals or graves, you might want to not listen to this next part. They examined the village and they discovered that apparently the story differs based on who you hear it from. Either one or all of the graves there had been exhumed. In Inuit culture, it's a very big no-no to mess with the graves. Like, once they're there and it's done...
I think that's every culture.
Yeah, it is. I don't know why it seems like it's just them, but maybe it's a little more for them. I'm not sure. But either way, you don't mess with the graves. No one wants to do that.
Well, no, you should never disrupt someone's resting spot.
But another weird thing, like you could argue that, oh, maybe like some wolves or some animals or something dug them up or something, you know. But no, because the stones that were lining the graves had been placed into two neat piles next to each of the graves. Something no animal could have done.
Oh.
Unless they have thumbs and have decided to stack up rocks, but...
Right. It's not an animal, but what kind of a monster digs up the graves, does something with the bodies, whether it's reanimate or something else, and then is like, I'm going to neatly stack these rocks here?
Good question. Also, nearby the village, they made another sad discovery. No less than 7, but some say it was 2 to 3, of the sled dogs were found frozen in the snow. They apparently had been tied to some scrub brush and couldn't get to the food or anything, so they were just kind of left there.
That's horrible.
That's one of another weird thing is because out there, the sled dogs are like the lifeblood for the village. They pull the sleds for the supplies, and they're really the only way to get around effectively. That's like their cars.
Even nowadays, there are parts of the world that you can only travel with sled dogs or sleds or snowmobiles, but
exactly,
you need some sort of sled.
Yeah, you need a sled to get through because you're not gonna walk through that, and nothing else is gonna get through that.
Yeah.
So no one knows. I couldn't really figure out why they might have been left there. It also needs to be noted that these dogs wouldn't have succumbed to starvation in the time it took for the Mounties to get there. But LaBelle stated that he found food on a campfire that was still burning. So how does all of that add up? Did they let them starve for some reason? But we don't know because they didn't find any evidence as to why the graves were dug up and why the dogs were left. And we also don't know who lit the fire with the food. None of it makes sense, and it's kind of creepy. Just a little bit.
I mean, the only thing I can think of is that whoever did this is the one who lit the campfire after they tied the dogs out and made them starve, after they dug up all the graves, after they disappeared 25 people.
That's what it sounds like, but
the thing is, that person would have had to leave somehow, unless I guess they left through one boat.
No idea, but there's more.
Great.
The Mounties reported seeing bluish lights pulsating over an area on the horizon, and they noted that it didn't look like an aurora at all. In the ensuing Mountie investigation, which lasted over 2 weeks, they concluded that the Inuit inhabitants had been gone for 2 months based on some berries that they found in the bottom of one of the cooking pots. No idea how they came to that conclusion over some berries in the bottom of a pot, but apparently they've been gone for 2 months.
Wow.
And if they were gone for 2 months, like you said, who lit the fire?
And whoever lit that fire, I know it would have taken a little while for it to die down, but it wouldn't have taken that long.
No, it would have only probably taken a few hours to die down, if that.
Yeah, so someone was in that village a few hours before he got there.
Yeah. But unfortunately, this is the story that doesn't really have a conclusion. We still don't know what happened to these 25 people that inhabited this village.
Damn it, Greco! I don't like
Hey,
that.
Ranger did the research here.
Y'all know that I get mad at Unsolved Mysteries for not giving me a solution.
Well, this is one of them. But Ranger did dive a little bit deeper, and this story first hit the newspapers apparently on November 30th, 1930, by the newspaper Le Pas Manitoba. Hopefully I pronounced that right because that looks about right. It was after this that the...
You were close.
What did I do?
No, you were close. It's a Le Pas, but yeah, you were very close. Good job.
Close enough. It was after this that the national newspapers got a hold of the story, and then, of course, everyone knew about the story.
Every single person on the planet?
Yeah, every single person. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Even places where they don't have newspapers, they still read the newspaper and found out about it.
Wow.
It didn't have to be like this.
Yeah, it did. Hey guys, it's Mo here, and I wanted to take just a second to talk to you about Anchor.fm. When Kraken and I decided to start the podcast, we had no idea what we were doing, and we went out there and searched to see what we could find to help us, because you have to not only create the audio and the podcast itself, but you also have to upload it to all the different services, and how do you do that? So we found Anchor, and it has been a godsend. Anchor has tools that allow you to record and edit right from your phone or your computer, so you don't even have to have fancy editing software to do it. You can also, when using Anchor, you can distribute it to all the listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcast, and more. I know Stitcher's on there, Radio Public. It's amazing. And it's all in one place. If you guys followed me when I was streaming, you know that I am all about streamlining everything to a single application to do it all. And that is what Anchor does for us. Plus, big point here, Anchor's totally free. So you can either download the Anchor app from the App Store on your phone, or you can go to anchor.fm to get started. I highly suggest it, and I hope you will enjoy it if you, too, are starting your own podcast.
After the popularity around it kind of died down a little bit, it just kind of like got shuffled under a mound of papers and wasn't heard about again until a man named Frank Edwards wrote his book Stranger Than Science in 1959 and included this story in it. At this point, this case was and probably still is the oldest case in the RMCP's files, the Royal Mounted Canadian Police. As such, they apparently didn't like it being brought up again, and the RCMP lambasted Edwards and accused him of fabricating the story, which wasn't true. They tried, the mounted police tried to say that he made up the story. I mean, that sounds like, don't look more into this. We don't want you knowing what happened.
Sounds like a cover-up.
Sounds like they know something. Watch me get a knock on the door, and it's just a guy on a moose, and it's like,
Mounties don't ride moose.
I will find an image of a man riding a moose. They probably do.
They ride horses.
There are some that ride moose. I'm sure of it. You can't tell me otherwise.
I'm pretty sure there are not domesticated mooses with saddles.
Imagine if there were, though.
Mooses. Moosei?
Meese.
Mice. Meese.
Mice. I'm calling them mice from now on.
Yes, the Mounties ride mice.
Look at that gaggle of mice. Look at that gaggle of mice.
Isn't it gaggle geese?
I have no idea. Look at that pod of mice.
Pod of mice.
Look at the murder of mice over there.
See, I know that one's crows.
Look at that school of mice. Those mice have some big antlers. But can you imagine, though, if they did domesticate a moose and used it as it's the perfect mount, because no one's going to mess with a moose.
Yeah, but I also feel like a moose is not exactly something that's easy to control. Like,
probably not, but that's what makes it even better.
But how would you ride it? It would just, like, knock you off, trample you, and then, like,
very carefully
use its horns to scoop you up and fling you somewhere. I don't know how moose operate.
But see, that's the thing. If you get the one, like, if they have big enough horns, that can be used as like a basket to haul the prisoner. You just put them up there in the horns, and is that not how that works?
I don't think so. I'm pretty sure. Not only have we gotten science and nature very, very wrong, but we might have just offended an entire country.
When do we not do that?
I mean, yeah, thinking back, I don't think there's an episode that we've actually not.
I rest my case.
It's all your fault.
Probably, yeah. But as with stories that kind of get passed around, things tend to change. People tend to make things worse than what they actually are in the story just for the sake of making a good story. One book apparently has said that it was 2,000 people that disappeared.
That's a lot of people for a very small village.
Yeah, so that's the one that's like, that's a little less believable. But there were 2 investigations done by the RCMP, however, both in a dismissive tone, and both were conducted in 1931. The first was done probably unofficially by Sergeant J. Nelson, who was stationed nearby, and he concluded that LaBelle, after talking to one shop owner, and only that shop owner, was a newcomer to the area and that he didn't know what he was talking about. Nelson makes no mention of going to the area where the village was either. His tone throughout was dismissive, and it seems that he was a skeptic without an open mind throughout.
I feel like I understand being skeptical about, oh, it might have been aliens, yada yada. But if you are a police officer,
people are still missing.
Yeah, if you're a police officer, people are still missing, and you shouldn't be dismissive. You should, and I know this is still a problem today. There are times where, a parent is like, my kid's missing, and they're like, it's only been a couple hours. And it's like, yeah, but my kid wouldn't do that. And they're like, you gotta wait. Those types of things. I know that still happens, but when you have like 25 people disappear, you probably shouldn't just brush it off.
You probably should look into that.
Yeah. You should probably be like, maybe I should just at least go like see if they're there. Maybe they came back.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone, perhaps we'll get down into that a little bit further down into the story, but that's another thing too, is I don't think it's mentioned here that anyone ever went back later to see the state of the village, or if they just like, all right, they're gone. Don't know where they went. No tracks, nothing to go on. Anyway.
Maybe it's still there, untouched.
That's kind of what it seems like. You want to go visit? You want to go spend the night?
Yeah, sure. You go on ahead. I'll meet you there.
I don't feel like I've heard that before.
Just wait for me. Just don't worry about it. I'll be there. I'm always punctual.
I feel like I've heard that before too. Yeah, there was that one time we were going to SeaWorld. You told me to go ahead and meet you there. I was there. I waited until they closed, and then finally they told me that like you can't sleep here. You gotta go home.
I don't know what you're talking about. What's SeaWorld?
Understandable. How long is it gonna take before someone thinks that I'm serious, that you actually leave me at places? Someone's not gonna get the joke and think, wow, they were gonna go to SeaWorld and she just didn't show up. Wow.
She's a horrible person.
It's kind of payback after telling people that I was on trial for murder and then failing to mention it was in Minecraft.
I mean, no one really doubted it though.
That's the scary thing, is no one was surprised. They were just like, oh, okay, and how did that go?
Well, he must have gotten off because he's recording a podcast now.
They let me record this during my free time.
That's how we get such good information from prison.
Yes. This is where the stories come from. We don't have anyone that writes these up. I just get them from the inmates. This is how that happens. It's first person stories. It's fine, don't worry about it.
Isn't first person like you did the thing? So you committed all the crimes we've talked about? Wait, you've committed every single crime we talked about?
Let's not get into the specifics.
You were killing in the 1800s, Krakow?
Let's not get into the specifics here. Listen, words, phrases. Krakow's really a vampire. That's why he's somewhere between 60 and 12. Anyway, there is a story here. The second investigation was done at some point during 1931 and was most likely the official report. It states, unsurprisingly, that the area was searched and no untoward evidence was found. It was also noted that the Inuits might have used that area as a seasonal village, but they don't know. So if the Mounties can't figure out what happened, maybe we can. We have theories. So
when he says maybe we can, he means me, Allie, and him, right?
Most likely, yeah. We're all just going to go down there and Scooby-Doo this thing.
Oh, you're going. Okay.
It was Old Man Jenkins.
Oh, okay. Krakow, I think you might want to wait in the car.
It'll be fine. I'll do it for a Scooby snack.
So theories.
Yes. So we can look at the logical explanations, like were they murdered? Were they taken by force? If this was the case, you'd think there would be evidence like blood, bullet holes, signs of a struggle, bodies. but none of this was found. And it seems like if they left voluntarily, then why leave food, rifles, and sled dogs and just kind of disappear with no trace?
So here's a question, because you said it was like sub-zero temperatures, so the ice would have been frozen pretty thick.
Yeah.
But they had been gone for 2 months.
Yes.
Is it possible that they had been either taken out by boat or drowned?
Possibly, because apparently we don't see anything here about an explanation of whether or not they looked into, like, they checked the lake, did they check like under the ground, like under the snow, in the ice.
Yeah.
It seems like they just kind of searched the area as you would for someone who just recently went missing.
Yeah. Instead of taking into account 2 months.
Yeah, they didn't seem like the search was quite as thorough. If it's a fishing village, it's probably close enough to like a lake. So I'm unsure on that one. And another thing is the grave that was found dug up. Apparently, as far as Ranger found, there's no explanation other than it was a lie from LaBelle. And that's a possibility, is that he was trying to get some more attention on the story and decided to add some things into it to make it more interesting. But we can also go into the not so logical theories too. What about aliens?
What about aliens?
This one is a little obvious because of the flashing lights that we're supposedly seeing. So if maybe some aliens just kind of, as Ranger put it, just swooped down and grabbed the people, dug up the graves for their experiments, and just left, is a possibility.
It's possible. However, so we're gonna kind of go into Mo's scary brain space. I believe in extraterrestrial life. I believe that the universe is far too large for there to be one single planet to have life. However, the amount of technology, fuel, cost, etc. to do long distance space travel, I don't think they're coming to our planet, scooping up 25 random people in the middle of Canada and disappearing like that.
You can look at it this way, and this is going to be a really dark way to look at it, but what you just said is the amount of technology and fuel that it takes to travel that far across space. What if they can, and what if they're just so advanced it's like a kid burning an anthill with a magnifying glass?
Yeah, but
let's grab some of these ants and see how they work. We don't need anything they have because we have things that are better than what they have. So let's just see how they work for the fun of it.
But even in the 30s, they had telescopes and eyeballs that they could see. Like, yes, there were some lights and things. And the one guy said, it was a cylinder that turned into a bullet. But I feel like, I don't know. I'm very skeptical about the alien angle. Like, I'm not skeptical that extraterrestrial life exists. I'm just skeptical that this story in particular is aliens.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Because I know, yeah, it does. But I know that's where my theory was coming from, is that, like, I know movies and shows are just like Hollywood, but still, that's a lot of the explanation for aliens in shows and movies, is that
true,
they're so advanced they don't need us for anything else. It's not like they want anything from us. They just want to see how we work.
True.
And to kind of expand their territory, I guess.
Yeah, well, there's like in the Star Trek universe, there's this one race that they just use people to fix themselves. So I will stop being a grump about it.
Yeah, it's fine. The next one is demons or evil spirits. We want to give all due respect to indigenous culture and the Inuit tribe, so Ranger did a deep dive on this one. Some people have referred to the Torngatsuk. I've never heard of that until now, but it's likened to a spirit, and as far as we're aware, it means big or great spirit. When people refer to the spirit, they refer to one that is said to inhabit Greenland. It is said that this spirit takes the form of a bear and is not nice, by all accounts. I didn't think demons or evil spirits were nice, but it's nice to know we have some proof here that they're not nice.
Yeah, and I still like bears. They are far too cute for how vicious they are.
Exactly. Look at those ears.
I know. And those feeties, minus the claws, but like they have those big.
They got some big old beans.
Yeah, they got those big old beans.
Those are murder mittens.
Yes, they are. But they're so cute, and they got those noses. Okay, sorry.
Yeah. You just want to boop the nose.
Boop the nose and scritch the ears.
It would probably like that. There are some bears that probably would like that. Let's go out into the wilderness and find out.
I'm pretty sure the bears that like that aren't the ones in the wilderness.
I mean, there is a bear that is, I don't know if he's nice or not, but that they use to train or to test objects and like coolers and stuff that are supposed to be bear proof. They have a bear that does the inspection. That's how bear-proof items get the rating.
Yeah.
It's whether or not it can survive X amount of minutes in the cage with this bear, because they put him in a gave him this job because they needed him out of the wilderness because he was known for breaking into things. So they couldn't leave him in the wilderness because he was very good at what he does.
Thief bear.
Basically, they had to lock up the thief bear and they gave him a job of testing bear-proof objects. But
it's amazing.
Bear testing aside. Apparently, people would make offerings to this spirit or incur his wrath. So it's like, you gotta leave offerings or else he's gonna get angry. The spirit is, by all accounts, not real historically in Labrador Inuit anyway. I probably pronounced that wrong, but it's just worded like Labrador. I don't. It makes me think of dogs, so that's why I'm just like.
That's Labrador.
Is that right?
Like the dog. Dogs are named after things.
You sure it's not the other way around? Anyway. As far as Ranger could find out, it was first described in 1916 by Ernest Hawks. However, it is pervasive and people believe in the spirit to this day. The actual Twangatsuk, which means good or helpful spirit, has been described in association with the Moon Man. Of course, he's got to throw in a European translation here. I'm just going to go with Moon Man because apparently that's just the European translation, unless you want to give it a go.
Igaluk?
We'll go with that. But apparently the Moon Man is the god of the moon.
Really?
He's described as a nice moon. A nice moon?
He's a very nice moon.
He's described as a nice moon. He's a very nice moon.
Is that his profile bio on Moon Tinder?
Is a very nice moon. Moonder.
He's on Moonder.
Celestials are us. Only Celestials.
Oh my god, when you say that, I saw... It was a YouTube video, and I don't know why it was recommended to me, but I thought it was hilarious. I didn't watch a lot of it, but there's a girl who made an OnlyFans.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a lot of girls who made OnlyFans, but...
You realize how little that narrows it down?
Yeah. She dresses in traditional Victorian garb, and everything, like, the whole thing is set very Victorian. And she does racy ankle pics. Because back then, that was basically on the level with pornography. So she...
Why does that sound like something I would do? Why haven't I thought to cash in on this?
You're going to dress in a Victorian gown and show your ankles?
There've been talk of me doing a 50s pinup calendar, so don't lie, you are 100% on this idea.
Yeah. I don't think I'd want to look at that calendar, but I think you should make it.
Well, if I make it, I'm signing a copy and sending you one, and I will cry if it's not hung up by your work desk, where people can see it if they're on a call. Just don't explain it, just have it in the background, and if they see it and they say something about it, just pretend it's not even there. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. There's nothing there. What's that back there? Oh, it's a calendar.
It's a calendar. It's fine. This is fine.
This is fine. But anyway, the moon spirit. He might be a nice moon, but he's described as a nice spirit who sends animals for the Inuit to hunt. Then there are the, I'm going to butcher this one because he didn't give a pronunciation here, Turngat, which is the word for spirit. There are good and bad spirits. I'm just going to translate that because I know I'm not saying that right. We don't need to offend any more people than we already have.
Well, it's spelled very similar to the one at the top, which is Turngatsuk, so it would just be Turngat.
Fair enough.
Turngat.
But there are good and bad Turngat, and the shamans of the Inuit use these spirits to help or hinder people, depending on the shaman. But when Christianity came into the big picture, all Turngat were painted as demons and evil. And all of this to say, people believe this great or big spirit, who was known to come in animal form, came to these people and scared them off. Maybe they believed their sled dogs had been possessed by this devil, and that's why they left them behind. Ranger writes here that he finds this explanation to be a little distasteful and wrong given the facts that were brought up, but it's sensationalized to say the least and kind of disrespectful to think that something like that would have happened, but
Yeah, especially when the whole thing about the spirits being evil, like all of those spirits being evil, was because of Christianity, which this group of people did not believe in. You know, they obviously worshipped the turn god. What, I can't talk, but
those spirits.
Yeah, the spirits.
Yes.
So it is I would agree that it's kind of just brushing away their belief systems because you don't believe or understand it. And my personal pull would be towards, and I'm sure this will not surprise you at all, but towards something actually happening. It was murder, kidnapping. They were forced away, you know, like a human did something bad to another human.
There's a point there, like, if every house had a rifle, though, if someone tried to force them away, I feel like that wouldn't be very easy, and there would be evidence of a struggle.
I mean, if it was more than one person.
See, a lot of people to have, like, a village of 25 or so people, and all of them have rifles to just kind of be like, all right, you know what, we're going to listen to you.
I mean, you had a village of 25, but if a boat comes up with 50 armed military dudes.
Another thing, too, is, like, how stubborn were these people? Or are they just like, nah, you're messing with the wrong village? So anyway, I started blasting.
Yeah, it all depends on if they were peaceful. And also, there was...
Yeah, because those could have just been for hunting, and they didn't believe in using them in any other way, so...
Yeah, or what if they were poisoned?
That, too.
You know, maybe they were either poisoned or drugged, and that's why they didn't give up a fight, and then they just went bye-byes.
Another one that this is where we start getting into more of things that are a bit more of a stretch, but are a little more credible than aliens or spirits. Alternate dimensions. So it's no surprise that there are a bunch of historical records full of stories of people just mysteriously disappearing and they're never heard from again, like the missing 411 stuff that's been floating around. There's also the case of Orion Williamson, a farmer. That's an A, and I don't know. He's a former. I don't know what a former is, but it's a type of farmer.
Well, I mean, I guess he could be a former farmer.
Fair. You have a point. But he was a farmer from Selma, Alabama, who was said to have vanished into thin air in front of his wife, son, and two neighbors while strolling across his property in July of 1854. Apparently, he walked into a field and just disappeared from view, and he never came back. The entire community showed up to look for this farmer, but they didn't find anything, and he was never seen again. But Williamson's son swears that he heard the ghostly cries of his father coming from the field for weeks after this.
That's unnerving.
Then there's the case of a shoemaker from Warwickshire, England, by the name of James Byrne Warson. Warson's penchant for bragging about his long-distance running abilities had finally worn down the patience of all of his drinking buddies, Hammerson Burns and Barham Wise, who challenged their friend to run the 40-mile distance from Leamington to Coventry. Warson, of course, accepted this bet, and within the hour, I can't read today. What is it with us in English today?
Today? Like just today?
You're struggling. What is it with us in English in general? He accepted the bet, and within the hour, the three of them were on their way, with Warson jogging and Burns and Wise following close behind in a horse-drawn cart. The incredibly fit Warson seemed to be enjoying himself, running at a solid pace and joking with his buddies, until he tripped just 20 feet ahead of his friends. Burns and Wise watched in abject horror as their friend fell forward with an awful cry of terror and then just disappeared in front of them.
So, were they sober when they did this? Because you said they were drinking buddies.
Yeah, this doesn't say if this was something that, like, they were drinking and he was bragging and then they were like, all right, well, let's go put your bragging to the test here and see if what you say is true, or if this was just a bet between friends. I don't know. I'm not sure if they were drinking or not. But even if they were drinking, you think he would be laying there and he would start talking back?
Yeah, I guess. And also, like, if he was going to run 40 miles, I wouldn't drink beforehand. I'm sorry.
Maybe he was just built different.
Fair.
But in the same vein as Mr. Williamson, the search for their missing cohort proved fruitless. So, in essence, with all these theories out in the open, no one can really say what happened to these 25 or so people that populated this small fishing village on Anjikuni Lake. Some people say it was natural and they just moved on to another spot and left things behind, and that LaBelle either exaggerated or misremembered the scenes that he was describing, and the fear of dying in the cold and exhaustion got the better of him. But others say it was aliens or some other supernatural phenomenon that swept through the village and took the inhabitants away. So this is unfortunately where we have to leave the story, Mo.
I don't like the unsolved ones.
No one knows what happened to this fishing village unless you want to Scooby-Doo and go see what happened.
I do like snow in the cold, so...
You also don't like being taken away by aliens or who knows what.
True. I'll take Han with. He'll protect me.
He's very strong.
He is very strong. But thank you for the story. It was very good.
Yes.
Thank you, Ranger, for writing it. And doing all the research. It was really well done. But I forgot at the beginning of the episode that I did have something to talk to you about.
We can add that in here. It'll be fine.
Yeah. We got an email from a listener.
Really?
Their name is Dawn. And in this email, it talks about the Oliver Davenport tragedy, which we covered. I forget what number the episode was, but it was a while back if you want to give it a listen. And in the email, it says, my grandfather was best friends with Oliver's half-brother, who was one of the first people on the scene to the tragedy. So they've heard the accounts of the event firsthand on several occasions. His half-brother spoke of Oliver's time in World War I, and he had actually suffered from a head injury and still had shrapnel trapped in his body.
That's not good.
No, it's not, especially head trauma with shrapnel still in there. That shrapnel shifts, moves, connects different parts of your brain.
Yeah, no.
Oliver had allegedly been told there was no safe way to remove the shrapnel and was at future risk of dislodging. And if it ever did dislodge, there was no guarantee what might happen. So people speculate that the shrapnel dislodged, and that is possibly what caused the mental break, as well as the stress of selling the farm and moving. And additionally, it was assumed he probably suffered PTSD because back then it was not treated. It was called shell shock. They were like, you'll be fine. It's fine. So I'm covering a couple other little parts from the story. The family is buried in the cemetery in the middle of Dawn's family's farm. The plots have Oliver and then all 5 children in a single line. Clara did live several years after the event, but was never the same. I am not surprised. My grandfather attended the funeral and said that vehicles were parked along the road for over a mile in both directions.
Wow.
The church that held the funeral only cited 75 people, but it was estimated that 3,500 were in attendance.
There's a lot of people.
Their grandfather could remember talking to a reporter that had traveled there all the way from New York City.
Sounds like this was pretty widespread, and everyone just decided to show up.
Additionally, the farmhouse was not as small as we assumed. We hadn't found a lot of details on the farmhouse itself, but it was a large 2-story clapboard house that stood on the land until the early 2000s, and that's when the fire it was burnt down. It was rented out to several renters over the time from the tragedy until the fire. And there were a few other hinky things that happened. So the son that had lived from the event actually ended up drowning on a school trip.
No.
And then another man that lived in the house afterwards hung himself on the back porch and wasn't found for 3 days.
Sounds like a cursed house.
Yes. The house was burned down by a couple that purchased the farm around 2000 because the building was in disarray. It was just easier to just burn it down, and probably all of the folklore around it and the horrible things that happened. The house sat on a very sharp curve in the highway that has been named Dead Man's Curve. Multiple accidents have occurred there, and there is often a mysterious fog at that curve in the road. So just adds some flair to the story.
Good old mysterious fog.
Mysterious fog on Dead Man's Curve. But I loved getting this email. I did reply and say thank you, but I also wanted to put it out here for anyone who does listen to the podcast routinely, or anybody who wants to go back and check out the episode. It is the Davenport family tragedy story of Oliver Davenport, his wife, and his children. So I just wanted to make sure that we kind of got that on here and made sure everyone knew.
Yes.
See, look at us being, I was going to say professional, but we're not. We're not professional at all.
Are we famous now?
Considering that I'm still sitting here in my Batman bathrobe, slipper socks, and pajamas, I don't think so. Before we run into 5 more tangents, thank you very much for the story, Kraken.
Yes.
Thank you very much to Dawn for the email with the details on the Oliver Davenport family.
Mm-hmm.
And if anybody out there does have information like this on any of the stories that we've covered, or suggestions for new stories, we would love to hear from you. We have our email contact information on the website, so you can check that out, get a hold of us, let us know, suggest stories.
Suggestions, feedback, notes, things that we may have missed.
Well, thank you again, and we will see y'all next time.
And thank you to Ranger for researching.
As always, make sure to check out our website for all the show notes, sources, and more information at thesquonkandthehag.com.
And don't forget to like, subscribe, and bonk the notification bell to get alerts for new episodes and content.
All right, Krako, you ready?
Okay, bye.